Claire had spent her whole life avoiding moments like this. Moments where her heart chose to speak louder than her mind, where her steps suddenly felt heavier, and where a decision seemed to hold the power to change every piece of her future. She stood at the corner of Pine Street in Seattle, watching the lights from the cafe windows blur in the evening drizzle. The sky was gray, the air cool, and the gentle tapping of rain on the sidewalk felt strangely calming. For weeks, no, months, she had rehearsed what she wanted to say to Ethan. But every time she got close, her courage slipped away. Now, as she stood outside the place where they had shared countless quiet mornings and soft laughs, she felt her fear tighten around her chest. Part of her wanted to turn and walk away, pretend tonight wasn't supposed to be different. Pretend her feelings weren't complicated. Pretend life wasn't sitting her down and asking for honesty. She rubbed her hands together, trying to warm her cold fingers. But the truth was, the cold wasn't the problem. Her nerves were. Every memory of Ethan hit her at once, his calm voice during their late-night calls when she couldn't sleep. The way he always noticed when she was stressed, even when she tried to hide it. The way he laughed softly at small things like squirrels stealing bagels from outdoor tables. The way he looked at her sometimes like he was about to say something important, but stopped himself. She knew him well enough to understand what silence meant, and tonight she was done waiting for silence to decide her life. She wasn't sure what pushed her forward, maybe the way the cafe lights glowed like gentle lanterns. Maybe the weight of everything she had held inside for too long. Or maybe simply the truth that loving someone quietly was starting to hurt. She took a slow breath as the door opened and the smell of warm coffee drifted out. Then she saw him. Ethan stepped outside wearing that simple navy jacket he wore almost every day. Drops of rain dotted his dark hair, and he brushed them away with the back of his hand. When he saw her, his face lit up, not dramatically, not like the movies, but in the quiet, real way that made Claire's heart slip a beat. He smiled like he was genuinely happy to see her, like he had been waiting. Like her showing up changed something about his evening. "Claire," he said gently, slipping his hands into his pockets as he approached her. "You look like you're freezing. You okay?" She wasn't okay, and she didn't know how to pretend she was. But she nodded because her throat felt tight and words didn't want to come out yet. "Yeah," she whispered, though it was barely audible. Rain tapped lightly on the pavement, and people passed by in muted colors. Umbrellas shifting and footsteps blending into a soft hum. But Claire felt strangely isolated in the moment, as if she and Ethan stood in a world slightly slower than everyone else's. She had spent weeks planning how to start this conversation. But her mind suddenly emptied out. It was both terrifying and strangely freeing. "You came early," Ethan said softly. "I thought I'd have to wait inside for a bit." She lifted her eyes to him. "I almost didn't come at all." For a second, surprise flickered across his face, but he didn't step back or ask questions she wasn't ready for. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, a silent invitation to explain whenever she was ready. That small, patient gesture, that was what made him different. That was what made this moment harder. Claire tried to steady her voice. "There's something I need to tell you." She expected him to tense, to hesitate, maybe even to look away. Instead, he stayed completely present, eyes focused on her with a calm seriousness that made her breath catch. She didn't know how to interpret it: encouragement, curiosity, fear, but it was enough to keep her from running. She looked down at her shoes, watching rain slide down the tips. She could feel her heart beating too fast, and she hated that vulnerability felt so physical. She had always been the responsible one, the one people turned to, the one who remained steady. But Ethan made her feel, not in a dramatic or overwhelming way, but in small, consistent moments that added up to something she could no longer ignore. The truth inside her wasn't loud, but it was steady, and steady truths were harder to escape. "Claire," Ethan said softly, "whatever it is, I'm listening." Her breath trembled slightly. "I don't know how to say this without making things complicated." "It's okay if it's complicated," he replied. "Life usually is." His warmth, his patience, it broke something inside her defenses. She wished he were careless or distracted, because then walking away would be easier. But he wasn't. He never was. And she knew that was exactly why she had fallen for him without meaning to. She pressed her lips together, trying to push down the tremor in her voice. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of saying the wrong thing, of changing something that matters to me." Ethan stepped a little closer, not enough to overwhelm her, but enough to let her feel like she didn't have to stand alone on the sidewalk with her fear. "You don't have to force it," he said quietly. "But if you're scared because of me, I want to understand." She felt tears prick behind her eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. She wouldn't cry, not now. "Not here. I just can't keep pretending everything is the same," she forced out. "Something changed. Or maybe it changed a long time ago, and I'm only now admitting it." Ethan's eyes softened. "Claire." She held up a hand slightly, stopping him. "Please let me finish. If I lose my courage now, I won't get it back." He nodded, one slow, supportive, steady, the way he always was. Claire took a breath that felt deeper than any she had taken in weeks. "You're important to me," she said, the words trembling out. "More important than I ever planned. More important than I think is safe. And I've been trying to ignore it, but I can't anymore." Felt like the world paused. A single car drove by, the headlights flickering across their shoes. A couple rushed past with their umbrellas bumping into each other. Somewhere inside the cafe, a barista laughed loudly. But around Claire and Ethan, everything felt still. She didn't know if Ethan was surprised, conflicted, or silently relieved. His face held an emotion she couldn't read, and that made her chest tighten. For a brief moment, she feared she had made a mistake. But then he spoke softly, calmly, gently. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "I'm right here." She felt her breath stutter, not because the words were dramatic, but because they felt like something solid to hold on to. "You're not upset?" she asked, almost afraid of his answer. "No," he replied. "I'm just trying to understand everything you're feeling. And I want you to be honest, even if the truth scares you." She looked up at him, meeting his steady gaze. The courage she had almost lost began to return piece by piece. She wasn't fully brave yet, but she was braver than she had been 10 minutes ago. And that mattered. "I needed to tell you," she whispered, "even if it changes everything." Ethan's voice lowered. "Let me hear it." "All of it." She inhaled deeply, the crisp evening air filling her lungs. She wasn't done speaking. This was only the beginning. But for the first time, she felt like maybe she wouldn't have to face this moment alone. And just as she opened her mouth to continue, the cafe lights flickered behind them. "I say?" And the quiet world around her seemed to hold its breath. It was the moment before everything changed. The moment she had feared and hoped for at the same time. The moment she could no longer walk away from. Claire's words hung in the air, delicate and heavy at the same time. The cool drizzle of the evening felt different now, softer, like the world itself had paused to let them breathe. Ethan didn't move away. He stayed where he was, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him, but far enough to let her space to speak. She wanted to run through everything she felt in a single breath, but the truth was too layered, too fragile to be rushed. "I've kept this to myself for too long," she admitted, voice quivering. "I've tried to act like it's just friendship, but it isn't. I've wanted more than I thought I could ask for or even hope for." Ethan's eyes softened. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze never leaving hers. "I've had a feeling," he said quietly, "but I didn't want to push you. I wasn't sure you were ready to hear that. I feel the same." Claire's chest tightened. Relief mixed with fear, a knot of emotions she couldn't separate. She had imagined this moment hundreds of times, rehearsed every word, every pause, and yet being here now, standing in the evening rain with Ethan, it was more real, more intense, and more terrifying than anything she had imagined. I'm scared," she confessed, "because if I say all of this, if I finally admit it, I don't know what comes next. And I don't want to lose you." Ethan took a slow step closer, careful, measured, letting her decide how much she wanted. "You won't lose me," he said softly. "I've been waiting for this, waiting for you to speak your truth. I just didn't want to scare you or rush you. But now we're here. And it's okay." His words wrapped around her like a blanket. For the first time, Claire felt the sharp edges of fear dull just a little. She looked at him, really looked at the quiet strength in his eyes, at the subtle smile that hinted he had been holding his own feelings in check for just as long as she had, at the way his presence made everything else fade. You really feel the same?" she asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Ethan nodded. "I do. I've felt it for months. I just didn't know how to say it without risking our friendship, without making things awkward or complicated." She swallowed hard. Her heart raced and a tear threatened to spill, but she blinked it back. "I can't believe I almost didn't say anything," she whispered. "I almost let fear decide for me." He reached out gently and brushed a wet strand of hair from her face. "You didn't," he said. "You found your courage, and that makes this moment ours." Claire felt her chest swell, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the chilly rain. The world seemed smaller now, compressed around them, making space for only the two of them. She laughed softly, a sound full of nervous relief. I thought I'd ruin everything by saying it. I didn't expect you to feel the same." Ethan smiled, the kind of smile that made her stomach flutter with quiet happiness. "You didn't ruin anything," he said. "You gave us a chance. That's all I ever wanted." She exhaled slowly. For weeks, maybe months, she had held herself back, replaying every interaction, analyzing every word, fearing every look. Now it seemed almost ridiculous how much she had worried. Ethan's calm presence reminded her that sometimes the things we fear the most are exactly the moments we need to embrace. "So, what now?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though her hands shook slightly. Ethan's gaze held hers firmly. "Now, we move forward, together." She felt a rush of something like lightness. It wasn't about rushing or dramatic declarations or overwhelming gestures. It was about the quiet, steady agreement that they would face this new chapter side by side. Claire reached out her hand almost instinctively, and Ethan took it. Their fingers intertwined, and for a moment, that simple touch carried a weight she hadn't expected. It carried understanding, acceptance, patience, and hope. "I feel like I've been waiting for this forever," she admitted, "and yet I didn't know I could be this scared of saying it." "Fear is normal," Ethan said. "It doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it matters." Her lips curved into a small, grateful smile. He had a way of putting things so simply, so honestly, that it was impossible not to trust him. Claire realized then that she had spent years hiding her feelings, thinking she had to be strong, independent, in control. But strength wasn't about keeping emotions locked away. Strength was facing them, no matter how messy, how vulnerable they made you feel. Ethan had shown her that. Standing there, soaked slightly by the drizzle, wrapped in the quiet of the evening and the warmth of his hand, Claire felt something shift inside her. She didn't have all the answers, and the future was still uncertain. But she knew this. She didn't have to face it alone. "I've imagined this," she said quietly, "but never like this." "Not this real," Ethan nodded. "Because this isn't imagination. This is us here, now. It's real, and it's ours to shape." They started walking slowly down the street, hand in hand, letting the city's soft lights guide them. Every puddle reflected the glow of nearby street lamps, and every quiet step seemed to echo the unspoken rhythm between them. They didn't speak immediately. Words weren't necessary. The connection, the shared understanding, the mutual recognition of feelings held for too long was enough. Sometimes silence said more than words could capture. Claire felt her heart lighten with every step. Fear was still there, lurking in corners of her mind, but it no longer held power over her. She realized how much she had needed this to finally be honest, to finally be understood, to finally let someone in. Ethan glanced at her, a faint smile on his lips. "You know," he said softly, "I think we've both been scared of this, but in different ways. I was afraid of pushing too hard. You were afraid of speaking too soon. And here we are, finally finding the middle." She laughed, a soft sound that mingled with the drizzle. "The middle. I like that. It feels safe." "Safe is good," he replied. And it feels real, too. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the scent of damp earth and warm coffee from the cafe they had left. Claire felt a quiet peace settle in her chest. For so long, she had believed love had to be loud, dramatic, urgent. But standing here, walking slowly beside Ethan, she realized it could be gentle, patient, deliberate, and just as powerful. She squeezed his hand lightly, and he squeezed back. That simple exchange spoke volumes, more than any grand declaration ever could. "I think," she began, hesitating just slightly, "that I've wanted this for a long time. I just didn't know if it was possible." Ethan stopped walking for a moment and looked at her, his eyes warm, steady, unwavering. "It was always possible," he said. "We just had to be brave enough to admit it." Claire smiled, feeling tears threatening to spill but refusing to fall. She wanted to memorize this moment, the way the rain caught in his hair, the gentle curve of his lips, the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet city around them, and the simple, steady warmth of his hand in hers. "So," she said softly, "we do this together." "Yes," Ethan said, his voice steady, "together." And just like that, the weight of months of hidden feelings lifted, replaced by a quiet, profound relief. They didn't need to rush, didn't need to plan every step. The first step had already been taken. They had admitted the truth. They had faced fear. They had chosen each other. And that was enough for now. Claire let herself imagine the days ahead, quiet mornings together, walks in the rain, laughter over coffee, shared secrets, and the comfort of knowing someone truly understood her. It wasn't a perfect world, and life would still have challenges. But standing here with Ethan, it felt like everything had shifted in the right direction. She felt alive in a way she hadn't for months, maybe years. Each breath seemed lighter, freer, filled with hope. They continued walking past the softly glowing street lamps, past the cafes and shops now closing for the evening, past the familiar streets that had been the backdrop of countless small moments in their friendship. Everything seemed familiar, yet entirely new. Every glance, every step, every shared silence carried the promise of possibility. And for the first time, Claire didn't want to run from it. She wanted to move forward fully, without hesitation, because she knew she didn't have to face the unknown alone anymore. Ethan glanced down at her hand in his again and squeezed it gently, as if to reinforce the unspoken agreement between them. They didn't need words. What had been said, what had been felt, was enough. Claire felt a warmth spread through her chest that wasn't just from the physical closeness, but from the certainty that someone she cared for deeply cared for her in return. And she realized that sometimes life didn't need dramatic declarations or perfect timing. Sometimes it just needed honesty, patience, and the courage to take the first step. Claire's lips curved into a small, contented smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt at peace with her emotions, with her choices, and with the world around her. She had spoken her truth. Ethan had heard it, had not refused it, and had met it with his own truth. Together, they had created a new beginning, a delicate, fragile, and beautiful beginning that felt entirely theirs. The rain lightened to a mist, and the city seemed to hum softly around them. They walked on, hand in hand, their steps synchronized in a rhythm that was both comforting and exhilarating. The streetlights reflected on the wet pavement, creating patterns that seemed almost magical. Claire felt a quiet thrill that life could hold such simple yet profound joy.